Did you know that your mind starts sending silent warnings before death, subtle mental changes that 99% of seniors and their families completely miss? These aren't just normal aging signs. They're critical red flags that neurologists recognize as predictors of mortality within 12 months. What's most frightening is that most people dismiss these warnings as just getting older, when in reality, they're your body's final attempt to signal something is seriously wrong. In this video, I'll reveal the 7 deadly mental changes that medical experts identify as end-of-life indicators, and exactly what to do when you spot them in yourself or someone you love. Let me tell you about Arthur, a 78-year-old retired accountant from Ohio. His family noticed small changes in his behavior. He stopped calling his grandchildren, mixed up simple words, and started giving away prized possessions. Everyone, including his doctor, dismissed these as normal aging. 6 months later, Arthur was gone. His daughter Bethany later discovered that these weren't random changes. They were documented warning signs that medical professionals recognize as indicators of impending mortality. "If only we had known what to look for," she told me through tears. "We could have had more quality time together, made different decisions about his care, even possibly extended his life." The tragedy is, Arthur's story repeats thousands of times daily across America because most people simply don't know what to watch for. Stay with me, because knowing these 7 critical warning signs could give you or someone you love precious extra months of quality life, proper medical intervention, and the chance to make meaningful final decisions. Let's dive into these crucial mental changes that you must never ignore after 70. Sign 1. Sudden social withdrawal. Have you noticed a loved one who was once socially active, suddenly becoming withdrawn, refusing invitations, or showing no interest in activities they previously enjoyed? This isn't just wanting peace and quiet. It could be one of the most reliable predictors of approaching mortality. Neurologists at Johns Hopkins University have identified that sudden social withdrawal in adults over 70 is strongly associated with end-of-life transitions. Their research shows that this isn't typical introversion, but rather the brain's response to neurological changes that occur in the final stages of life. Dr. Elizabeth Harrington, senior neurologist at the Center for Aging Research, explains, "When seniors who previously maintained social connections suddenly withdraw, it often signals significant neurochemical shifts in the brain that correlate with terminal decline. We see this pattern repeatedly in patients within 6 to 12 months of end of life. Take Patricia, a 75-year-old former teacher from Florida. Her son Jason noticed that his mother, once the life of every family gathering, suddenly stopped accepting phone calls and declined all invitations to family events. "She just said she was tired, but it wasn't like her at all," Jason recalled. When they finally convinced her to see a specialist, they discovered advanced neurological deterioration that explained her withdrawal. Within 5 months, Patricia had passed away. Her doctors later confirmed that her social withdrawal had been one of the earliest warning signs that everyone had missed. If you notice this sign in yourself or someone you love, don't wait to take action. Schedule a comprehensive neurological evaluation immediately, not just a standard checkup. Specifically request cognitive assessment tests that measure socialization patterns and brain function. Document exactly when the social withdrawal began and what activities are now being avoided. This information is crucial for proper diagnosis. Don't accept vague answers like, "It's just aging." Insist on thorough testing. Every day matters when these signs appear, and early intervention can sometimes slow progression and extend quality of life. Have you noticed any changes in your social patterns or those of someone you love? This isn't something to monitor. It requires immediate attention. Sign 2. Sudden loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities. When someone over 70 abruptly loses interest in hobbies, pastimes, or activities they once loved, it's easy to dismiss it as boredom or fatigue. But geriatric psychiatrists warn this specific change, called anhedonia, is one of the most overlooked predictors of mortality in seniors. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that sudden anhedonia differs significantly from gradual shifting interests. Dr. Samuel Richardson, Director of Geriatric Psychiatry at Columbia Medical Center, explains, "There's a specific neural pathway degeneration we can identify in brain scans of patients experiencing end-of-life anhedonia. This isn't simple disinterest. It's the brain's pleasure centers literally shutting down, which often precedes death by 8–14 months. Unfortunately, it's misdiagnosed as depression in over 60% of cases." Consider William, an 82-year-old who had played chess enthusiastically for over 50 years. His daughter Nancy noticed that one day he simply stopped, saying he just didn't see the point anymore. His doctor prescribed antidepressants, but they had no effect. When William finally received a proper neurological evaluation, they discovered changes in his brain that indicated he was in the early stages of terminal decline. What appeared as simple disinterest was actually his brain's warning system. William passed away just 7 months later. Here's what you must do immediately if you notice this sign. First, document exactly which activities have been abandoned and precisely when the change occurred. Second, bypass general practitioners and seek evaluation from a neurologist specializing in geriatric care. Third, request specific tests that measure dopamine and serotonin pathway function, not just standard depression screenings. The difference between standard depression and end-of-life anhedonia requires specialized testing that many doctors don't automatically order. Time is absolutely critical. Proper identification of this sign can mean months of additional quality time with proper interventions. Have you or someone you love suddenly lost interest in activities that were once sources of joy? Don't wait another day to seek specialized help. Sign 3. Accelerated cognitive decline. Is someone you love experiencing memory problems that seem to be worsening rapidly? Not the occasional forgetfulness that comes with age, but a sudden, noticeable acceleration in confusion or disorientation. This pattern of rapidly accelerating cognitive decline is what neurologists identify as one of the strongest predictors of mortality within 6 to 12 months. Harvard Medical School researchers have documented a phenomenon they call terminal drop, a measurable acceleration in cognitive decline that often precedes death. Dr. Jennifer Wilkins, neuropsychologist at Mayo Clinic's Brain Health Division, explains, "We can now identify distinct patterns of cognitive deterioration that signal end-of-life processes rather than typical dementia progression. When cognitive abilities decline at an accelerated rate over weeks rather than months or years, it often indicates fundamental neurological breakdown associated with approaching mortality." Take Elaine, a 77-year-old former librarian who had always been sharp and articulate. Her son, David, noticed that over just a few weeks she began struggling with simple words, forgot recent conversations entirely, and became confused about basic daily tasks, a dramatic acceleration from her previous minor memory issues. When they sought specialized testing, doctors identified patterns consistent with terminal cognitive decline rather than standard dementia. Elaine passed away just 5 months later. "The doctors told us that the sudden acceleration was the key warning sign we should have recognized earlier," David shared. "If you notice accelerated cognitive changes, you must act immediately. First, document specific examples of new or worsening confusion with exact dates. This timeline is critical for proper diagnosis. Second, Request a comprehensive neurological evaluation that includes specialized cognitive decline rate assessment. Many standard cognitive tests don't measure the rate of change, which is the critical factor here. Third, ask specifically about terminal drop evaluation. Many doctors won't consider this without direct prompting. This isn't about extending life at all costs, but about making informed decisions while there's still time. Early identification can mean the difference between months of confusion versus quality time with proper support. Is someone you love showing signs of rapidly worsening confusion? This requires immediate, specialized attention. Sign 4. Frequent talk about death or finality. Have you noticed an elderly loved one suddenly talking more about death, saying goodbye, or making statements like, "I won't be here much longer"? While occasional thoughts about mortality are normal as we age, a sudden preoccupation with death can be your body's subconscious recognition of internal changes you're not yet consciously aware of. Research from the University of California's Department of Psychological Sciences has identified that specific patterns of death-related conversation often appear 6-9 months before death in individuals who showed no obvious physical decline. Dr. Thomas Harris, specialist in end-of-life psychology, explains, "The human mind has remarkable awareness of internal bodily changes. When seniors begin frequent death talk without obvious cause, it often represents the subconscious mind's recognition of physiological changes that signal approaching mortality. We've documented this phenomenon repeatedly, even in patients with no diagnosed terminal illness. Consider Robert, a 76-year-old retired engineer who suddenly began telling his children how he wanted his belongings distributed and repeatedly mentioned, 'When I'm gone.' His family assumed he was just being practical about aging. When he began telling friends goodbye after routine visits, they became concerned and sought medical evaluation. Comprehensive testing revealed early stages of multi-system failure that standard checkups had missed. With early intervention, Robert received treatments that extended his life by over a year with good quality of life. His doctor later confirmed that his death talk had been his mind's way of alerting others to changes his body was already experiencing. If you notice this sign, take these steps immediately. First, don't dismiss death talk as merely philosophical or emotional. Document specific phrases and their frequency. Second, request a comprehensive physical evaluation focusing on subtle multi-system decline, not just obvious disease markers. Many standard tests don't catch the early patterns of system failure that the subconscious mind might detect. Third, consider consulting a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in end-of-life awareness, as they're trained to distinguish between normal mortality concerns and predictive death awareness. Taking these warnings seriously can lead to early interventions that might extend quality life. Are you or someone you love suddenly talking more about death or not being here much longer? This deserves immediate medical attention, not dismissal. Sign 5. Changes in temporal perception. Has someone you love started mixing up time periods, talking about past events as if they're happening now, or experiencing unusual confusion about dates and sequences? These aren't just innocent memory slips. They're what neurologists identify as temporal disintegration, one of the most reliable predictors of approaching mortality in seniors. Research from Stanford University's Neuroscience Institute has documented that temporal disorientation in previously lucid seniors follows specific patterns that strongly correlate with end-of-life transitions. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, neurologist specializing in temporal perception, explains, "We've identified distinctive neural signature changes that occur when the brain begins end-of-life processing. The temporal lobe, which manages time perception, often shows deterioration patterns 4 to 8 months before death. What families describe as living in the past is actually the brain's chronology systems beginning to dissolve, a process distinctly different from standard dementia. Take Catherine, an 80-year-old who had always been oriented and clear despite some normal aging memory issues. Her daughter Andrea noticed that Catherine suddenly began talking about her long-deceased husband as if he had just gone to the store, referred to her adult grandchildren as babies, and insisted it was 1975. Unlike typical memory issues that come and go, these temporal distortions remained consistent and increased. When they finally sought specialized neurological testing, doctors identified patterns consistent with end-of-life brain changes. Catherine passed away just 4 months later. If you observe temporal disorientation, here's what you must do. First, document specific examples of time confusion, noting whether they follow the pattern of merging past and present or complete chronological disorientation. Second, seek evaluation from a neurologist who specializes in temporal perception disorders, not just any memory specialist. Request specific temporal orientation testing, as standard cognitive assessments often miss these crucial patterns. Third, consider creating simple daily orientation supports like clear calendars and daily schedules, which can reduce anxiety while medical evaluation proceeds. Understanding these changes for what they are, not simply confusion but potential end-of-life indicators, allows for appropriate care decisions when time may be limited. Have you noticed someone confusing time periods or talking about the past as if it's happening now? This requires specialized evaluation without delay. Sign 6. Specific hallucinations or delusions. If someone over 70 suddenly starts seeing deceased relatives, having conversations with people who aren't there, or expressing specific delusions about leaving or going home, these aren't just random confusion. They're recognized by hospice professionals as some of the most common pre-death experiences, often occurring months before physical decline becomes obvious. End-of-life researchers at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies have documented that specific types of hallucinations follow predictable patterns in the months preceding death. Dr. Emily Richardson, neuropsychiatrist specializing in end-of-life phenomena, explains, these aren't typical psychiatric hallucinations, but follow distinct patterns we can identify. Approximately 60–70% of patients experience visitations from deceased loved ones. Travel metaphors like needing to catch a train or packing delusions within 2 to 6 months of death, even when no terminal diagnosis exists. Consider Thomas, a 79-year-old widower with no history of mental illness or significant cognitive decline. His son Michael became concerned when Thomas began having animated conversations with his deceased wife, insisted he needed to pack for a journey, and repeatedly said people were waiting for him. Rather than dismissing these as confusion, Michael sought specialized evaluation, which revealed early signs of multi-system failure not yet visible on standard tests. With proper medical intervention and understanding, Thomas and his family had 4 months to address important end-of-life matters while he was still largely lucid. If you notice these specific hallucinations or delusions, take these steps. First, document the exact nature of the experiences, particularly noting if they involve deceased loved ones, travel metaphors, or going home themes. Second, seek evaluation from palliative care specialists who recognize these as potential end-of-life indicators, not just general mental health providers who might misdiagnose them as psychiatric issues. Third, resist the urge to correct these experiences, as this often increases distress without helping. Instead, respond with compassionate listening while seeking proper medical evaluation. Understanding these experiences as potential indicators allows for appropriate medical and emotional support during what might be a transition period. Have you, or someone you love, experienced seeing deceased relatives or talking about needing to go somewhere. This deserves specialized attention immediately. Sign 7. Unusual behavior with personal belongings. Have you noticed someone suddenly giving away prized possessions, obsessively organizing personal items, or expressing unusual concern about what happens to their belongings? This behavior pattern, known to hospice workers as putting affairs in order, often appears 3 to 6 months before death, even when no terminal diagnosis exists. Research from the Journal of Palliative Medicine has identified that specific behaviors around personal possessions often precede death by predictable timeframes. Dr. Richard Thompson, Director of Behavioral Sciences at Northwestern Memorial's End-of-Life Care Division, explains, "We've documented that approximately 65% of individuals engage in distinctive property disposition behaviors within 3 to 6 months of death. This isn't random generosity or typical decluttering. It follows specific patterns where individuals focus intensely on ensuring treasured items reach specific people. The subconscious mind often recognizes declining health before conscious awareness occurs. Take Harriet, a 76-year-old woman known for cherishing her collection of family heirlooms. Her niece Olivia was surprised when Harriet suddenly began giving away treasured items, labeled boxes with family members' names, and spent hours organizing photographs and letters. Though Harriet seemed physically well, these behaviors concerned Olivia enough to seek medical evaluation. Comprehensive testing revealed early-stage organ failure that standard checkups had missed. With proper intervention, Harriet's family gained 6 valuable months to address important matters together. If you notice unusual property management behaviors, take these immediate steps. First, document specific instances of giving away possessions or organizational behaviors, noting whether they follow patterns of urgency or finality. Second, rather than dismissing this as just getting organized, request a comprehensive medical evaluation focusing on subtle multi-system decline indicators. Many standard tests don't catch the early patterns of system failure that might trigger these behaviors. Third, while seeking medical evaluation, approach these behaviors with compassion rather than contradiction. They often represent important psychological processing. Understanding this sign for what it potentially represents allows for appropriate medical and emotional responses during what might be precious remaining time. Have you noticed someone suddenly organizing or giving away possessions with unusual focus or urgency? This deserves immediate attention and proper evaluation. These 7 warning signs aren't just interesting information. They're crucial knowledge that could give you or someone you love precious additional months of quality life, proper medical care, and the opportunity to make meaningful final decisions. By recognizing sudden social withdrawal, loss of interest in pleasurable activities, accelerated cognitive decline, frequent death talk, temporal disorientation, specific hallucinations, and unusual property behaviors for what they truly are, your mind's final warnings, you gain the power to respond appropriately when every day matters most. Remember Arthur's family who missed these critical signs? You now have the knowledge they wished they'd had. Don't wait until it's too late to recognize these subtle but powerful indicators. When you spot these changes, seek specialized evaluation immediately, document patterns carefully, and approach with compassion rather than dismissal. The mind often knows what's happening before standard medical tests can detect it. If you found this information valuable, please hit the like button now and leave a comment telling us which of these 7 signs surprised you most. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss crucial health information that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Share this video with family members involved in senior care. This knowledge truly saves lives and provides precious time when it matters most.